So there was something I was going to talk about last week, and I didn't get an opportunity to make one of these, because I had a lot of stuff going on. But it was involving people who are very judgmental or very unkind to people who are fairly new in the deal, as far as having, a matter of a couple of months or 3 months or 6 months or what have you. And it got me to thinking about some of my own experiences in the deal. For example, I remember when I was really new to AA, and I had it was one of those kind of odd numbers. It was like 47 days, or it was maybe like 43 days or something like that, since I had gotten drunk and had a drink. And it was a big deal to me. Uh, Believe it or not, there's a little bit of cringe-worthy stuff going on here, because I was actually sincere in the AA program, and I was actually a big believer in everything I was hearing in those rooms, and I was really proud of myself, almost, because it was a huge deal to me to go almost over a month and a half without getting drunk or without getting loaded, because at that time in my life, with all the shit that was going on, it was a struggle not to get to a liquor store every day and just drown it all out and deal with the consequences of bad hangovers and everything in the morning with another drink or two to get rid of those, and then struggle through an anxiety-ridden day until I could get loaded again the following night. It was huge for me. And I was starting to feel, squeaky chair here, I was starting to feel a little bit, I don't know, I was starting to feel a lot more confident about myself. I was feeling better, probably because my internal system in my brain was starting to feel a little bit better, because I wasn't flooding them with a lot of poison every night, and I wasn't flooding them in the morning with poison in order to get out of bed, and I wasn't going through constant withdrawals and hangovers and all that other kind of thing. I felt pretty good. It was a big deal to me, and I had somebody call on me. I didn't do a lot of talking in AA at the time, and somebody had called on me, and I had said something about I only had like 43, 47 days. I can't remember what it was, and a few people clapped. And right after the meeting was over with, there was a whole bunch of people that had to come up to me and tell me, well, you probably are not going to make 90 days if you're proud of yourself for having 43 or 47. 43 or 47 is nothing. I mean, normal people go for decades without it, and you think you're special because you have 47 days. Well, the real work hasn't even set in yet. The real feelings haven't even set in yet, and blah, 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 and all that other kind of shit they throw at you. And I remember, which is so cringeworthy to me now, that I actually was defensive. They put me on a defensive position, which is exactly what they wanted, by the way. They wanted me to be on that defensive position so they could kick me some more. Because I had said, well, no, I'm actually going to meetings every day. I'm actually got a sponsor. I'm actually trying to work steps. And it was this smug, condescending, sneering, judgmental bullshit that I've talked about on here many times before. But there was one particular old-timer that he made it a habit to go up to people when they would get a red chip for 90 days or a blue chip for 6 months. And he'd say, a lot of damn people end up drunk after 90 days. A lot of people end up drunk after 6 months. And it was a big thing when one of his sponsees would get a medallion and they'd say, well, he told me a lot of people get drunk after 90 days. And he told me a lot of people get drunk after 6 months. And he was right, And, there were people that would sit in there and say, they told me that most people wouldn't make it in treatment when I was in treatment, and I was looking around the room for the other person who was going to make it because I was going to make it. Which, by the way, if you actually believe that determination and willpower is what causes you to quit drinking and actually making it, then you're not powerless over alcohol. But that's an entirely other different discussion. But it just occurred to me how many people I would see that if they were in a good mood, or if they were in a fairly positive kind of upbeat feeling about having some time away from booze, the AA cult and the AA old-timers couldn't wait to kick them when they were down. They couldn't wait to tell them, how they were about doomed to get drunk sooner or later, and how they were doomed to fall off the wagon, and how 90% of the people couldn't make it, and, all these negative affirmations that probably cause more people to relapse than we'll ever know or ever find out about. Because when people do relapse, when people do hit a hard spot and they do fall off the wagon, the AA old-timers can cross their arms and and get that smug fucking look on their faces and say, see, I told you so. I told you weren't going to make it. I told you. You know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they probably, no doubt, in some way enabled to take place so they can feel more smug and superior. There was a person when I was new in the deal that was, he was what I became in the future, because he was one of those people that would pick up a white chip every couple of weeks like I was doing at one point, until I just gave up with chips altogether. But he even said to me in a moment outside of one of those meetings, he said, trust me, these people, they don't want to see people succeed. They want to see people fail. And then they can laugh and they can mock and they can scorn them and they can look down upon them, and they'll have something to talk about and gossip about and lie about and add to the rumor mills. That's what's really going on in this deal. I never knew what happened to him, but I found out he was actually right about that kind of thing. The one thing that they hide behind, the one little mind trick they do to you that I found out, unfortunately, the hard way, is when they're being wantonly cruel to you, when they're being wantonly ugly towards you, and they're saying things like, you know, you're probably not going to make it, you're probably going to die, and all that other kind of shit. They will tell you that they're doing that because they want to save your life. They're telling you that they're doing that because they care about you. If you ever get an opportunity, like I unfortunately had a chance to do, to hear what these people are like when there's nobody in the little crowd around, they don't. They take malicious delight in seeing people fall off the wagon. They take glee in seeing people fail. They can't wait to see somebody blow their brains out or commit suicide, so they'll have something to climb on their phony fucking high horses and get their smug, condescending looks and get their phony anger and talk about, oh, I'm tired of people dying. I'm tired of people dying in these rooms. These people don't take this seriously enough. They don't take it seriously enough. It's a fucking performance for them. It's a performance that feeds their fragile little egos, while telling you that you need to get rid of your ego and get rid of yourself. But I talked about this in another video way back, a long time ago, one of my earliest videos I made. I remember a guy came to a meeting, and he was actually in a good place. He was in a good place mentally, because he had like 75 days without a drink or something like that. It was whatever it was, but he was saying, I feel so much better. My life is improving. Things are getting better for me. And of course, all these assholes couldn't wait to get called on and share. One of them said, yeah, when I had 15 years in the deal, I woke up one morning and I said, I think I should blow my brains out. That's how hard life is. After 15 years in the deal, I should blow my brains out and kill myself right here. Or maybe even kill my family and myself or something like that. I thought, hey, I really want what you have. I want to be 15 years without a drink and threatening to murder my family and kill myself. You know what I mean? But they couldn't wait to piss on the guy's parade. They couldn't wait to kick him when he was down. They couldn't wait to spread their misery and their hatred and their pathetic little bullying tactics onto somebody because somebody dared to feel good in sobriety. And I don't like the word sobriety. I've tried to get rid of that word out of my vocabulary. But I noticed over the years and over the time that I was in there, when they tell you that they treat you cruelly because they care about you, like I've said in other videos, they're not doing anything but feeding their own superiority complexes by saying, oh, there's another person that got drunk and died, and there's another person that relapsed and ended up in treatment, and I can sit here in this fancy fucking coffee shop after the meeting is over with and grin with my smug, all-knowing composure and talk about how most people will never get to be what I am. You know, they really do believe that there's some member of some elitist a group of people chosen by God to look down on everybody else who's less fortunate and to mistreat them in the name of helping them, of course. It reminds me of these things I've read about before in psychology articles where people talk about the effects of growing up in a home where you have parents that are impossible to please. No matter what you do, it's never good enough, and who still continue to abuse you, and the psychological effects it has on you. And, you know, this is not something that I can prove by empirical evidence or any kind of falsifiable claim, but I've often wondered if people with addiction problems don't come from environments like that, and that's one of the reasons they become stuck in a shitty program like Quackaholics Anonymous, because after a lifetime of having authority figures that they cannot please, that are never satisfied with their performances or what they do, that are never good enough to fill the shoes that they're supposed to be trying to fill, if it doesn't make them believe that that's the way the world should work and that's the way the world is, Not to mention the number of people I've seen that couldn't wait to get their 1-year medallion so they could start doing the same kind of tactics and the reprehensible behaviors of the old timers. But I've noticed that if you get a 90-year medallion, there'll be no shortage of people telling you that you're going to get drunk shortly and die. If you get a 6-month medallion, well, I'm saying medallions, in all the groups I ever went to, it was chips, a red chip for 90 days, a blue chip for 6 months. Some groups had a purple chip for 9 months, but not a lot of them. But when you would get those, there was no shortage of people waiting to tell you how you were doomed to fail at any given moment of any given day now. And then if those people were lucky enough to get a 1-year medallion, they were told, now the real work starts. Oh, you thought you knew what AA was. You don't know what AA is. You're just now learning. You probably won't make it a second year. Lots of people get a 1-year medallion. Few get a 2-year medallion. I mean, they just love that elitist... that elitist snobbery that they can use to beat on the less fortunate and on those that they feel is less than them. And in their own imaginary minds, there's some kind of legend, some kind of legendary badass figure that nobody is good enough to lick the boots of. And it kills me how many people I've seen that were susceptible to that kind of abuse. How many people felt that was the natural order of things, that was the way things ought to be, that was the hierarchy and how it worked, that those people were really doing that so you would pay attention and get more serious about your sobriety. But it doesn't matter if you're around 4 or 5 years or 7 or 8 years or whatever it is. The old timers are always going to feel like they're on a pedestal a little bit higher than you, and you're never going to get quite equal to them. I remember one moron that used to go around meetings all the time saying it takes 3 to 5 years to get walking around sense. Walking around sense, what the fuck is that? I mean, it sounds like some made-up term by some poorly educated individual that just loves to say shit like that to demean and to degrade the people who don't have that much time. Because most people are not going to sit in them fucking meetings for 3 to 5 years. They're going to either drink again, which is what the AA people want, or they're going to realize this is a bunch of bullshit and I can't tolerate it any longer. There's a few like me that hung around for a few decades, well, not a few decades, but hung around over a little over a decade for whatever bizarre reasons, but... it's always that way to set a standard that you'll never be able to live up to. It's always that standard that you'll never be able to quite meet. You're always going to be just a little bit less. They talk about alcoholics having inferiority complexes. I don't really believe that. I actually believe a lot of people with a lot of addiction issues have lost a sense of trust in their own intuition, in their own selves. They've said, oh my God, I've made a fucking mess of my life. I can't trust my own judgment any longer. They know that. They capitalize on that. They capitalize on that so they can keep kicking you when you're down, so you'll keep coming back for that ever-elusive serenity that nobody ever seems to have. I've never seen no 20-year-old timer that was a low-down individual that was treating people like garbage, that didn't have an absolutely miserable life, and couldn't wait for everybody else to be miserable with him or her or whatever the situation may be. But yeah, that was a topic that popped in my head when I was reading what a couple of people were talking about, how the sponsors were always kicking them, no matter how much time they did. If they did a step, they didn't do it quite right. If they did a 4th step, they weren't probably that honest yet, but it was okay because in another 5 years they would see how dishonest they really were, how in denial they really were. It's all a mind trick. It's all a mind trick to keep the abuse machine going. It kind of reminds me of something that I learned the hard way because I was unfortunate enough, or really fortunate in one way, because I got to see through the veil of the bullshit. But there was an old-timer I rented a garage from for a long time who had all his old-timer buddies around, and they would talk about people's 5th steps, and they would laugh at people, and they would mock people, and they would talk about how funny it was that they had sponsees mowing their lawns and doing their fucking laundry and all that other kind of stuff for free labor. It was all a big game to them. It was all a big joke to them. The only thing they were really worried about was all the attention they got every meeting that they got to go to and run their fucking mouths about what wonderful people they were, while telling you that they had no ego and they practiced spiritual principles in all their affairs, while looking down on the people that were really honestly trying to overcome their addictive behaviors. And talked about 14 minutes. Hopefully I get another video out by next week. There was a few other things I wanted to touch on in this, but I didn't quite get it all. But I think you get the general idea where I was going with that. Chime in on the comments. Let me know about how you're never sober enough for AA. And until next time.